Welcome back to another episode, and we're here with Denise Zumpe from CoR as the Managing and Founding Director.
Founder and Managing Director.
I got it in the wrong order. But
CoR Comply.
CoR Comply. See, this is why I try and practice, but still screw it up. Why don't you tell us what you do?
So obviously I work in chain of responsibility and compliance space through that business, and I do a lot of like gap analysis for companies. So they'll get me to come in and see what they've got in place, see what they need to have in place to be complying with their primary duty. And I will formulate a report and an action plan, and sometimes they're quite long, these action plans, and because I tend to be sort of detailed, I don't assume that people are going to know what I'm talking about all the time. Of course.
I think that part of what we found out while me and you have been chatting about coming here is the fact that people don't know. And so we'll just first off segue straight into what we started talking about, which is you've got a training app coming out. And online
training.
Online training, yep. And what does that encompass? What does it have with it, yep. So that we can get that part out of the way to make sure that we really have the description of it down pat.
Yeah. So in 2023, the National Heavy Vehicle Regulator put forward some funding for some grants for people to develop training in chain of responsibility, because it was identified that there was inconsistency in the way that it's spoken about, the language that's used and what people understand about it. So I applied for 2 grants actually and was successful in both. They were looking for untapped audiences, sort of people who weren't in the mainstream of the COR training that's already out there. And so I have developed a course which is really for executives, managers and people in non-operational roles. So it's not your loading, unloading ops manager. It's good for an ops manager. And also for businesses who use heavy vehicles, so they interact with heavy vehicles, but they don't operate any heavy vehicles. And that's a hell of a lot of businesses when you think about it.
Well, that's my business.
Yeah. Well, either way, yeah, yours is a little bit more different relationship. If you just, a distributor, so someone comes and picks up, goes and delivers it. A bit different to that, but your model. So that training was developed in collaboration with the regulator.
Yes.
So they were there every step of the way. And it was released about a few weeks ago.
How's it going?
Their newsletter. Amazing, absolutely overwhelming, because I get an email every time someone does it. And but it's free for 6 months as well. That's part of the deal with the funding. So that's obviously a bit of a sweetener for people. But hundreds of people are doing it, over like 500 in the first week.
Wow.
Which is constant, yeah.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That must feel very good, because how long did it take you to put together?
Oh, just over a year. It took ages.
A few late nights.
Because many late nights. That was mostly a lot to do with the collaboration with the regulator and everything having to be, bang on.
So if you have built a training platform, let's say, that is designed to find gaps in people's knowledge or find gaps in people's awareness or their thought process or whatever it might be, what are those gaps while you're sitting here with a microphone under your face?
So I do all the gap analysis personally. There's not something it's a good idea actually, thanks Jimmy. I probably will develop a checklist now. My website I have packages of procedures, policies and procedures, because having to write them from scratch is really hard for people. And often the ones that are out there are really cumbersome or haven't been developed by people who know the industry as well as I do in this space. So I sell those, and they need tailoring though. They're just like a base document, and online training. So I'm an ideas person. I've got so many ideas of all the things I want to do. But for the moment, I've got the critical concepts, which is the one with the NHVR. It's called Critical Concepts under the HVNL. Vehicle National Law, and I've got a driver one as well, which the background to that goes back many years to one of my clients being involved in a multiple fatality, and it was before the current legislation, before the change, but which changed the legal sort of test, a bit complicated I guess, but the things that the police looked at then, were looking for then, are still really relevant for today.
And what do you think I don't want to turn it into a question and answer sort of podcast sort of thing, but I do know that in our conversations, have found it incredibly interesting, some of the understanding of what I thought I had under the chain of responsibility and HV&L. I sound like I know what I'm talking about, but then when you really get down into it, I got no idea. No idea a little bit, but you know, understand what I'm saying. Just some of the difficulties around what chain of responsibility is, what paperwork I need, what I am responsible for, and I think that's part of the challenge.
I think that's been a big challenge, and a lot of it has come from the messaging that came with. And I don't know, it's 7 years since this amendment to the Heavy Vehicle National Law. I can't believe we're still talking about it 7 years later and still trying to really dig deep and understand what it's all about. So, but it was the messaging, and a lot of that was consultants, to be honest, making money, because it was like, the sky's going to fall in, we're all going to jail. You know, if something happens there, you're going to jail with that person. And even the way the diagram of chain of responsibility was depicted, it had all the parties all joined to each other in a chain. So that just really
I have seen that
perpetuated
diagram.
This concept that we're all in this together. So if you do something wrong, I'm going to jail. And that is so far from the truth.
What do you think the truth is then?
I can tell you what the truth is. The truth is the NHVR have now changed that diagram, and it's depicted as a truck in the middle, heavy vehicle driver, road user, and all the parties on the outside, but they're all pointing into that driver. So it's not what the other people are doing, it's what you're doing. It's what your business does, and to make sure that you don't cause any harm to that driver of that truck or any road user out there, or people working on roadsides and so on.
Insofar as what you are able to control, and what
absolutely, yeah,
not necessarily that I have to audit another company's systems. You know, like let's say we're sending a truck. Is it safe for me to assume that when I'm sending a truck to work to go drop off a load at somewhere, that place that I'm dropping off the load for needs its own systems? And
absolutely.
When the chain actually says that I should probably, and I have a lot of companies do this to us, they come and they check our systems, you know, and then tell us what they think, and we get so many mixed messages, you know, on what our responsibility is and, you know, what we have to do. And I don't want to, you know, rubbish anything, of course, because, safety is so important. But the major projects and the challenges that my trucking company has gone through on them, we have a spectrum of safety that is just monumental. If you're to be involved in major projects, like multiple of them, which we have been, how the hell does it, like, the trucks spend more time on their phones half the time now doing safety than they do actually driving. And then the amount of beepers and buzzers and squawkers and squeakers and horn going off when a door opens, and that, I get it. Someone's opened the door and the handbrake hasn't been on and the truck has rolled.
Yep, a lot of that.
Yep. But then now we have to go, and it doesn't seem, it seems almost like we tried to put in place something across the industry, but then it's been so fragmented that now any big player in the industry puts in place their own things under their understanding of the COR and HV&L, that now if you want to work for 5 of them, your trucks have to be an impressive specimen now.
So these are commercial requirements. These are not legal requirements, because chain of responsibility is about what you do about your business. It's not about what other people do about their business. So they need to, say major project, everyone needs to be looking at what they do. So how are they exposing those drivers to risk? And is it through the loading and unloading?
So I've got a question here, because I talk about, I've got like a fire extinguisher thing that I've spoken about, and if it'll be a constant theme throughout this. Could you put forward and say that the amount of time that some major projects ask truck drivers to be on their phone is actually a risk?
Yeah.
And so, like, because I've had that conversation before, that, you know, the risk that we have to do and in-house it and have a real look at it. Now, I'm not saying that there aren't factors in that phone which are making some part of it less risky. You know, let's say with overloading, you are completely and totally removing the ability to overload with some of these with phone uses.
Yeah.
However, the amount of time you're putting a phone in the hand of a truck driver might cause other risks.
Indeed. And there's, like you mentioned about all the buzzers and horns and all of that. So in health and safety world, ergonomics is about a person's interface. It's not just about desks and chairs. It's about how a person interfaces with their work. And when you've got that overload, so you can have, and this is what happened at SO, you know, in the 90s when there was the explosion. They've got that many alarms going off that when the big one's going off, it's just noise.
I did a real interesting training session along a fair while ago that said that a closer a company got to zero incidences across the board, especially with slips, trips, falls, minor cuts and abrasions, the closer they were getting to a fatality. Because you're looking at rolling your ankle walking down the sidewalk, but you're not looking for a crane lifting a concrete panel over the top because everyone's so focused on making sure everything's safe, they forget about the big things that need to be safe.
And that does happen in health and safety. I don't look at those little things. I'm interested in what's going to kill someone. You tell me what's going to kill someone, and that's what we're going to concentrate on because that's the thing that we have to try and eliminate.
So
not someone tripping over.
Some of my new trucks, I can barely drive them because of the amount of buzzers and beepers and alarms that are going off and how difficult it is to, you know, the scales that are in them and all sorts of other things. And, you know, I'm the sort of guy that I open up the door, the fucking horn goes off and that scares the shit out of me.
It's
I
like
sit
when you
down
don't put your seatbelt on and you've got your bloody beeper going and how it puts you off everything else.
Yeah, and then on top of that, to get paid for a load, you have to, you know, let's say enter mass limits. And I am all about it, and I think that it's great. But I do think it needs to be looked at. You know, there was a time that putting fire extinguishers in a cab and outside of a cab was incredibly intelligent on the machine, and it made some sort of sense. But for me now, that makes not much sense. Like, you know, and I think that it needs to be brought back from this, you know, constantly stacking more safety on top of it to have a real pragmatic look at what we're doing across the industry. The amount of money that in my case, I'm making subcontractors pay to get their trucks compliant, and then that there's no financial incentive from the contractor to us to pay those truck drivers more when now they have
VAU and everything on their trucks.
They have $25,000 worth of shit on their trucks. That fucking tape that you put on the side is like $15 a metre. It now needs to be on drawbars and bodies and this and that. And there's no financial incentive to do that. And then the amount of responsibility we give them in terms of it just doesn't seem equitable, some of the things.
Everything, like in the health and safety world anyway, like it's all risk-based. And so if there isn't, you know, if it's not eliminating or minimising a risk, then you've got to, why am I doing it? A lot of the stuff you're doing is because of the contracts that you sign up, say you have to.
Yes.
So that's not really a risk-based decision for you. It's a commercial decision.
Yes, of course. I also understand that different projects, you know, some that are finishing off now had like different VRU and they sign up because of different areas of, in this case, Melbourne, that they had, different. One had a lot to do about cyclists.
Yeah, like Footscray Road.
Footscray Road. The cyclists were all over Footscray Road, and so we needed to have specific VRU to be able to work it down there. That makes sense. You know, you look at that and you go, there are a lot of cyclists on Footscray Road. We do need something, underrun, protect, all of that. There are other things on it that don't make sense, and you just bash your head against a wall, especially when, you know, you rock up and, you know, you don't pass an induction or something like that for something possibly, I don't know, there's levels.
In safety world, there's a concept out there now called safety clutter, and that is when you're doing all these things sort of allegedly in the name of safety, but they don't add any value to the safety of people.
Do you find that a lot?
Safety world was full of that for a long time.
Is it getting better?
Yeah, it is. There's a whole kind of movement, I guess. It's called Safety 2, and it's all about safety clutter. It's all about the high-risk events, high consequence events, which is someone getting killed, and the clutter of of all the paper, like getting rid of all the paper, all the procedures and all of that stuff, and really focusing on what does my business need and doing what you say you do. That is the most important thing I would say to anyone. Whatever you're saying in your policies and procedures, make sure you're doing it. If you're not doing it, then change them.
This is an interesting point that I think that we should get into just a little bit, because it's something that you came when you helped my company that you went through, and you made it very clear about the policies that we have must be implemented, maintained and done. And I'd just run through why that is and what that looks like out the other side, because the other side is where we need to think about. You know?
Yeah, it is. And so sometimes you need to produce a whole lot of stuff for one of those clients, and that might be, I might say you might have another set of procedures. I think swims is a great example of that, because all the swims that are asked for are not really swims in the true legal sense of what a swims is. And I have said to clients, don't call that a swims, call it a JSA, call it anything but a swims. And to have an actual swims for the work that they're doing. So if something went wrong on site, this is more like, tradies, but if something went wrong on site and WorkSafe ask for the swims, they give them their swims, their accurate swims, which has got 2 or 3 lines on it, because it's about what could actually happen. But then they've got this other document that's allegedly a swims, but it's not a swims at all, which might have, it might be, I've seen them, 20 pages. That is not what a swims is.
Some of these jobs, like the permits that you sign on to, and that they make everyone go in a conga line, and sign their names onto, I've been part of a conga line 100 people long, sign this and then we'll get to work.
Sign on to the swims. You haven't even read it. Like, what does that do?
No, they run through it to you in the morning at 6:30 while you're standing freezing your ass off. And then they say, the major risks are everything everywhere is a risk, and we're all good. Just sign off and make sure that you look after each other, and there's a barbecue on Friday. And then you just have this, and I've thought of it often now because back then I was in a different spot, but gosh, what were you signing on to? And if anything ever happened, like, you've just completely and totally absolved everyone of any risk. Well,
you haven't really, but
to a point.
Yeah, I did some research. So I had a client in 2020 that had a fatality, and I then did some research of fatalities, just going on the WorkSafe websites up on the East Coast here. So Queensland, New South Wales and Vic, in 6 months there was 11 fatalities, all to do with uncontrolled movement of something big and heavy. And that could be stone slabs, it could be a forklift, it's steel pipes, it's just big and heavy. 11 fatalities in 6 months. You would think regulators are not going, hey, everybody, this is a big issue.
Yeah,
no one's ever really heard about it.
Big, heavy things. We need to do something about it. We need to look at it.
You need to be really, really careful. You need to know that this thing can kill you if something goes wrong. So don't stand near enough that if it falls off, don't be in the line of fire. And figure these things out before you start moving it together. Like, that is a real risk assessment, isn't it? Going, so how are we going to do this? Well, you stand over there, I'm going to be here. If this happens, we're going to run. Well, no, whatever it is. But,
But, of course. But even
that's
just
really dynamic stuff.
Even just to have something in place and actually talk about it, rather than, like the cranes are a great example, that they have all of these things about cranes falling over. Very few of them fall over, but a lot of them lose their loads.
Yeah.
And I think that the safety increase that's happened across the industry at the highest level has been really great with cranes. I think that cranes overall are actually fairly safe compared to what they used to be. There's a lot of training that goes into it. One of my mates is in cranes. So that's interesting.
There's another one that at the moment. So there's been, electric gates.
Yeah.
So if you're the type of business that you're going onto people's sites, say, collecting waste or something, and so you've got a remote to get in and out of these sites. So there's been a number of fatalities with those gates where the gate's been faulty, the guys got out of the truck to go and move the gate, and the gate's fallen on them and killed them. These gates are a big issue.
I know of one.
Right, yeah. Membreys actually had one, yeah.
Membreys did have one, very, very sad, of a really long-time employee.
Yeah,
I know his sons and everything like that. Absolutely terrible. And you just sit there and you go like, as a company, it's so challenging because at the end of the day, I don't know the ins and outs of that story, but so we won't talk about that one specific.
No.
But you have a gate, the gate's broken, you order a part, you're not stopping your business. And then the gate falls off of its tracks and something terrible happens. So to be able to have those systems in place that adapt while you're still able to work, so you've most likely had a system about the gate. Guys, press the gate button, it opens. And then that fails. And now you need to move into something else. And I think that
people need to know. It's like there's a famous professor who writes lots of health and safety books, and one of his things he says is a person can't protect themselves against a hazard they know nothing about. So my clients that are going into places with gates, I have just said, hey, make sure everybody knows if something happens to the gate, don't get out of the truck and try and move it, just ring. So that's it, simple as that. But if you don't tell them that, they're not going to know.
Isn't that interesting?
Yep.
Is that just common sense, though? But is there a place for common sense anymore? Because I would say most of the time there isn't, right? I've had some, you need to make sure that your policies document everything. You can't rely on the fact that a truck driver isn't going to get out and try and move a 400-kilo gate, by himself at 4 a.m. with his hands, and then have it, something happen. You need to have policies, you need to have training about that stuff.
Yeah, with those businesses, I've just done like a safety alert, and I've told, ops managers, transport managers, and I've just like, if you know something can kill you, I think that common sense is you're going to take notice of that one.
Of course.
And so that's why safety messaging is so important. And like you say, people get brain dead to all the like mundane stuff. But if you've got something and you say, this has happened, this can kill you, don't get out and move those gates.
But that sort of leans back into what we were saying before about the buzzers and the beepers and the signs. Like there are signs everywhere. Yep. You have to put a sticker, caution, hot exhaust, batteries, don't cut it open, like fuel is flammable. Okay, however, then when you run into an incident, you go, no one even looked at that. Like we have signs coming out our arse here. We've got them all over our shop and everything else.
Yeah.
But they didn't do anything. The dickhead still,
But you can't rely on people looking at a sign and interpreting what they're meant to from that sign.
So then you have to go into training about it, which is where like how far down and how far do you follow this rabbit down the pipe?
I don't think it's a rabbit down a pipe. It's just you tell them the important things that they need to know. And safety comes from the operations.
Yes.
So we don't look about safety as a standalone. It's like, tell me about the work that you do. Like for me, I go, you tell me about the work that you do, and I'll be able to go bang, bang, bang. That's what the hazards are. I'm trained to do that. Mm-hmm. I'm trained to look for bad things. It just becomes, a way of looking at it. But start with the operation. Don't start with all the safety stuff. It's like, tell me what you do, and we're going to build it out from there. And we've got to pick on the important stuff, the high consequence stuff. How could someone get killed doing this job? Yep. It's like, that's what we focus on.
And with that, you like. A big one that's came across the industry, which everyone would have spoken about and everyone's read about, is the police officers on the Eastern Freeway.
Yes.
And what chain of responsibility meant with them, what it meant for the company, because I believe the company's closed, people in jail, truck driver in jail, like it was just jail. They just went around and went jail.
Yeah, no, not quite. So truck drivers go to jail because truck drivers are prosecuted under criminal law. Not in HVNL. We might as well get onto this now. So drivers are not a party in the chain of responsibility. Some people go, oh, how could they not be? Because they're the ones that are driving the truck. They've got control of it. So we go back to the very history of chain of responsibility, which goes back to the sort of late 90s. Mm-hmm. And the reason the chain of responsibility was brought into the legislation was because all those off-road parties that would put the pressure on drivers and transport operators, and this was back in the day when, you went Melbourne to Brisbane and Sydney all in a weekend, there was no law that captured those people. Mm-hmm. drivers have all the road laws that all of us have to comply with, you know, speed limits and dangerous driving and all of that. Plus they have over 90 offences in the Heavy Vehicle National Law. Drivers don't need another law. They've got so many laws they have to comply with. This other group of people, the parties, they have no laws.
So you explain it to me that you could literally say, all right, I'll take off on Friday, Melbourne, Brisbane, and Brisbane, Melbourne. I need you back here Monday morning, 3,600 Ks. And the person who ordered that, no problem, back before this. But the driver was up shit creek without a paddle if anything happened.
Yeah, and one of the main reasons was it was like they knew that sanctions had to go beyond the driver. They had to extend it out to this broader group. So it's a blessing for drivers.
Yeah.
Because back in the day, it was the driver that just primarily copped it because there were no other laws. So it's a great thing for drivers. Drivers should be wrapped with chain of responsibility.
And so since then, so from my point of view, it's the big bad wolf, the chain of responsibility that you have to put in place. All of these policies and procedures and, ask for all sorts of stuff. And some are our responsibility and others aren't. And it's very challenging for us because when I sit down with someone like you say, yes, it is black and white, this. And we go, oh, no, we heard about a guy that didn't get the maintenance records of a truck, sent it out, the wheel fell off, and we're responsible for that because we need to get maintenance. Now, I know from you, you go, no, that's not the case.
Yep.
There's a expectation, I believe, that you can place on some other companies that they're doing their chain as well, or their responsibilities.
Yeah, and that's in health and safety law as well. It's around contracting, and it's about if you engage a contractor, then you are entitled to accept what they're telling you. So if they say, yeah, we're compliant with everything, then you're entitled to accept that they are.
Mm-hmm. Does that mean I can provide? That's not
what happens in reality, as you know, with all the major contracts. But for your company and for you to be compliant with the primary duty, you have to say, what do we do? What does my business do that could create a risk for one of those drivers that they end up, having an accident or something? So, we say, look in your own backyard first. Mm-hmm. Get your own house in order before you start worrying about what other people are doing, because they've got the primary duty as well. So, and you can't change the law. You can't transfer the law. You can't delegate any of these duties.
What is the duty?
The primary duty is, for parties in the chain, is that the safety of their transport activities, so your own transport activities, and that means you have to eliminate or minimise public risk. Public risk is drivers and other road users, people, property in public places, roadsides and so on, harm to the environment and damage to road infrastructure. Now, not in your workplace. So once a truck drives in the driveway, and this happened with my fatality, the way that it was, there was some questioning around the way that the load had been restrained, that when the guy was taking the straps off, that the load came loose. That's irrelevant. If it happened out on the road, yes, we've got NHVR. Happens in a workplace, we're back to OHS. It's a safe system of work. So it's about what happens on the road.
Isn't that interesting? So, see, very few people talk about that interface either. They talk about if it's got to do with the truck, it's got to do with HV&L, it's got to do with COR, and that's it.
Yeah. So I get when I'm doing these gap analyses, I get here's our COR policy. It's a traffic management policy for a warehouse. We're forklifts and where the driver's meant to sit, nothing to do with what happens on the road. A lot of the major projects as well, they're like, there's a lot of emphasis on about the loading and unloading. Well, that's on their side. So that's a system of work issue.
And what are you going to do with the trucks out on the road to help minimise exactly what's happening and all of that sort of stuff?
So that's, the way they're loaded, that's the driver fatigue, that's the condition of the truck.
So does that mean we should put buzzers and beepers all over it with everything that happens?
Well, a lot of those buzzers and beepers, like the ones for the chocks, the park brake, they're mostly like health and safety related because the guy gets out of the truck and the truck rolls or it hits someone else or something like that. So that's more of a health and safety prevention.
Isn't that interesting where it starts and it ends and just how many layers. For me, a business owner has to make sure that we've got every layer looked at, and we're trying to do our best to do our utmost to make sure that we're a safe workplace and environment and all of that sort of stuff. And it does seem like at some points, and I know that this isn't about you, but a business owner has to end up being, he has to be knowledgeable in COA, he has to be knowledgeable in OHS, he has to be knowledgeable about the trucks then, and he has to be knowledgeable about dispatch and allocations and quoting and all of those things. And it all is a bit grey sometimes for the business owner. You get people in like yourself to help you.
That's why you get.
To help you make it a bit more black and white.
Yeah.
But gosh, it's a challenge to, work through it sometimes. And you just keep leaning back to the regulator, which we need one and it's there, but what's put out from them sometimes from my end, not only, but the big thing that we hear about is these prosecutions that they do, and they seem that some of the prosecutions have one sort of, punishment, let's say, and then you get another one that the punishment is sky high, like a guy's up for 20 years. Yeah,
well, so as we said, drivers are prosecuted under road safety laws, criminal laws. So that's sort of that. In health and safety, they look at the size of the business and, the degree of harm of what's happened. A lot of people just plead guilty, and they plead guilty for offences that they don't need to plead guilty to. But if you're getting the carrot waved at you, 30% reduction in your sentence, no court hearing, so you haven't got all those legal fees, and it's all going to go away, it's just easier for them to do that. I can look at some health and safety prosecutions and I go, why the hell are they being prosecuted for that? But they just plead guilty.
So if, let's say, something did happen, what do you think the follow-through from, let's say we have an incident, we never want a big incident, but let's say we have a sizable incident on site. What do you think that a company should be doing?
Getting a lawyer.
Straight up.
Straight up, get your lawyer there, because the minute you've got a regulator on site, they're trained to be soliciting information, finding out what's going on. But it's a very emotional time, and people say things and they can be throwing other people under the bus and things that aren't even true, perception, all sorts of things. And this is the stuff that regulators use to prosecute you. I had a client that had a situation, and they asked me to come in and investigate and do a report. And because WorkSafe were involved, so that report went to WorkSafe, and WorkSafe asked me to come in to make a statement that enables them then to put me, to cross-examine me. And when I went to the WorkSafe office, the inspector just said to me, "Thanks for doing my job for me. That was a great report." So it's, and it's not good for my client because... No,
definitely not.
That's what they asked for, and that's...
At some point you also have to, we have a duty. We keep talking about specific words. Like as a director, as a company, we have certain things that we must do. And I don't think that anyone's ever saying we need to get out of those sorts of things. But I know that, if you walked over, let's say you go and talk to one of the guys in the on the yard, he might be like, "Oh yeah, I saw that was broken a few weeks ago," and the investigator goes, "Did you now?
Yeah.
And who did you report that to?" And he said, I called the girl, but she was at lunch, so she took down a note. And then they go to the girl and they say, "Did you get told this?" And now all of a sudden it's all of this stuff. When in actual fact, we do have a maintenance schedule on these vehicles, and, the pre-starts are there and everything else, and the guy hasn't necessarily filled it out and all of this stuff, but it's circumvented that whole process at the time as well.
So it's better just to... And WorkSafe, but all the regulators, they have to send you an official letter to say these are the documents we want. So that's what you should wait for, and that's what you should give them, what they want, not just everything free rein, because it just doesn't it doesn't work for anyone. It's just harder. So Those situations are very emotional, as you can imagine, when something like that's just happened.
We've had a couple of big incidences
Yeah.
in my company over the time. I know you know about them, and it's terrible. No one wants to send anyone to work in any way, shape, or form that puts them in danger.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're a shit boss if you do. It's simple. But when they do happen, it is so. It's heavy. It's a big day, you know. Like we've had some big accidents and stuff like that. Shut down some highways with one of them and stuff, and then it's getting put all over the internet, and then a couple of. It's a challenging time, and if you get investigated, then you come here and. Like, as far as I'm concerned, like I do everything in my power to be as safe as possible every single day.
Yeah.
And so when they do come and ask you, you almost want to go, oh, yeah, here's all of my stuff. What do you want?
Yeah. But, you've got specific duties as a director. You have to, and this is under both laws, health and safety and the HVNL, you need to demonstrate due diligence that the business has in place what it needs to be compliant with whether it's the health and safety law or the heavy vehicle law. And there's a specific sort of criteria, I guess, for due diligence. So, and that's what you need to be. That's what you need to do. So, and I think there's so much noise out there and so much confusion that is why there are people like me who are, really. I would consider myself to be a subject matter expert, and I read a lot, and I've read all those papers from 2001, regulatory impact statements, the whole history of the heavy vehicle national law, which is why I have this understanding of it and about where it came from. It was an absolute light bulb moment because you can't find anywhere really that tells you why drivers aren't a party in the chain. And then when you find out, you go, oh, that makes perfect sense. I wish I knew that.
You find bugger all about it anyway. And when we started having some of our chats, I said to you, it's just so grey. The area's so grey. And you looked at me like I had two heads, and you're like, Jimmy, it's actually quite black and white if you've really read into it, and you cut out a bit of the noise, you cut out a bit of the prosecutions that have happened, and the newspapers, condensing the information, and, you cut out some of the stuff that's written in, let's say, some of the trucking magazines where they're canning, everything that's happening there, and then cut out some of what you think you're responsible for that these prime contractors on the major projects are encumbering us with.
They're not prime contractors.
I
think they call them principal contractors.
Principal contractors.
Prime contractor has a specific definition in the heavy vehicle national law.
This is what I do. Yeah. I screw it up. So what's the prime contractor then? That's me?
Yeah, so when it's a person who engages a driver under like a contract of service. So it's you dealing directly with the driver. It's a self-employed driver. When you're engaging a company who's got a few trucks,
yes,
then that is you're not a prime contractor. You're actually in health and safety world a principal contractor, but it would come under. It comes under like your business practices.
Let's talk some specifics then.
Yep.
So if I get we'll take a major project, because this is where I find like it just gets like you want to bash your head against the wall a little bit. They do the booking, they know the driver, they know the hours, etc. And they have the app or whatever it is that's tracking them.
Yeah.
Now, I know that some major projects have put in place their own fatigue management laws in place. We don't want to get too into it, but then, you say prime contractor, but even though they're doing it through a subcontractor service, at what point are they organising absolutely everything for a driver regardless?
Yeah, it doesn't, from the legal perspective, it doesn't make any sense to do that. And the driver still has the primary duty, or not the driver, but the company.
Yes.
That owns, that runs the truck. Somebody else can be doing all that, but they have to do it. You can't transfer this duty off to or delegate to another party. So they've got to be doing it themselves anyway. And the more you manage like that, they're putting themselves right in the gun there for something going wrong, which they need not, because if they just kept their distance and said, that's your responsibility to manage, which it is. But they take on all this. I think one of the points too is like people collect all this data and all this information. If you don't do something with it, don't collect it. because you're just exposing yourself to liability.
Because we also have to keep it now for 7 years or whatever the time frame is around, an amount of time that we have to keep.
Look, under the Heavy Vehicle National Law, a lot of things they say keep for 3 years. There's stuff under health and safety laws you've got to keep for 30 years.
How many years do I have to keep it then? Like how many so we're up to docket number. It was like docket number 300,000.
Yeah.
But
you need to keep them for tax reasons because that's the 7 years. Yeah.
Yeah, so 7 years for tax.
7 years for tax.
I should probably know that, but it's 3 years for HV&L in some things.
Yeah. Like all the NHVS stuff is 3 years.
And then it's 30 years for some OHS stuff.
Some like hearing tests, audio tests. It's 30. I think it might be 30 years post employment as well. Yeah. So.
And it's just. I speak about it a lot. It's one of the reasons I made this podcast. It's one of the reasons I start to talk about it. There is nowhere that you could go to learn this shit. As the business owner, you go, oh, right, I'm going to get into trucking. And then they say, right, there's no pack that you go, which is why probably your training is so important, like for people to see, do a little bit of their own gap analysis.
So the training, coming back to the training, it is designed for directors and it does have a whole unit on due diligence and about actually going out to the business and getting information in about what's happening in your business, but getting the right information in. So another thing that's happened in COR world is a driver will come in to, get loaded. So somebody else has sent them in. They're nothing to do with your business. So they come in and then you start asking them, do you have a license? Are you fit for work? Have you had any drugs or alcohol? Well, you have no control over that. What you have control over is what happens on your site. Are you delaying this driver? Are you loading them properly? That's what you control. So, obviously, if somebody appeared to be
under the influence, you have a responsibility.
You have a procedure for that as well, which is generally to contact whoever they're working for and say, we've got a problem with your driver down here. The NHVR did put regulatory advice out. They called it non-compliant vehicles coming onto sites. And it basically says, you're not mechanics, your loaders are not mechanics, so don't start doing inspections of trucks. But if you saw something really obviously unroadworthy issue, you could then, have a process in your business then to escalate that. You can't make a citizen's arrest and stop people from leaving. That's actually illegal. But it's about the relationships that you have with the parties that you're interacting with and having a process in place and knowing what's in your control, as you mentioned before. It's what you've got the capacity to control. You don't have the capacity to control how another business runs. You have the capacity to control your business. So your transport activities there, or what you might do is go, well, this is a different scenario, but we're not going to use that company anymore. That's what you have the power to do. That's what and so you make that business decision. Well, you don't then start trying to tell them how they run their business.
Yeah, definitely.
You just worry about yourself.
I have an interesting thought about that, especially around you said that people aren't mechanics and we're expecting all of these pre-starts to be done on all of this stuff, that some of it is safety. Other parts of it is just mechanical, but some of it has to do with safety. And then or then we're running under, we've got, highway patrol or NHVR, which is also not mechanics. And I have a story where I was driving a truck, it would have been 15 years ago now, and I got pulled over. And they said they jumped underneath the truck. Now the truck, she was a bit ragged around the edges, but she was solid underneath. And they jumped underneath the truck, looked at it and said, that pipe's bent. And I'm like, what pipe? I jumped down on the ground, they're squatting, and I lay down on the ground and I said, which pipe? And they go, that one. I said, the drag link. And they said, yeah, that one. And I said, it's meant to be bent. They wrote me up a canary, slapped it on the windshield, and I'm like, this is going to be a piece of piss to get off, no problem. Go to the mechanic, get the roadworthy certificate, because the truck was roadworthy. She's a bit rough, but roadworthy.
Yep.
Go to Vic Roads. The person leans underneath the truck because on the piece of paper it says, bent pipe. And you know what happened? They said the pipe's still bent.
Yeah, right.
And so I had to go back to the dealership, get him written up, getting a thing that said that the drag link had a thing to go around, the chassis or something. That's part of the issue. Part of the issue is that you have untrained people put in spots via OH&S or via COR or via HVNL that have to implement these policies and these laws and these rules that don't know that the pipe's meant to be bent.
Yeah, I totally agree. And it's the same as what happens now because there's so much sort of misinformation out there and people just go along with it and don't question it. Anything, and I see this a lot when I do my gap analysis, and you're managing director, so you're signing off on whatever your policies and procedures are in this place. If you don't read them, that is problem number one. If you read them and there's things in there you don't understand, you need to call that out because if you don't understand it, no one else is going to. So every word, you're approving these documents, your name's on them.
I know.
Read them.
And how, but so I've got maybe a couple hundred people at work, right? What about people with 10,000 at work, where they sit down and like the policies and procedures end up being a library that they have to read through.
If you've got that many people, you've got a whole lot of support people there that are doing the videos and, doing the inductions over a period of weeks and they've got all that in place. It's the in-between where you're managing it all yourself. You don't have a subject matter expert because you're not big enough.
Yeah.
But that's where I think, and I'm not trying to blow my own trumpet here, but it's like having some oversight from someone who does know to support your people who you've got in those roles, even if it's just in a mentoring type thing, because I do that with a few people.
You've very much helped us. You've helped us, tighten up where we need to tighten up and told us we're actually wasting our time on focusing on some of the issues that which really are out of our control. The amount of data that we got from our subcontractor fleet, literally just because, other people did it. So we did it too.
Yeah.
And you're just getting, I don't want to say reams of paper because it's gigabytes now, but gigabytes of shit that we don't necessarily need that is really hard to manage and audit. And so now all of a sudden, there's 15 pieces of paper that each subcontractor has to give us per year, that you're saying that is, or we're saying is what's needed to work for us. And by the time you get certificates of currency, of public liability, machinery insurance, work cover updates, license updates, truck C services and, B services, whatever C service is, because
the annual,
but that's called different things and at different times for different trucking. So I know that PACCAR Kenworth, they have to write down it's the equivalent to a C service on paperwork.
But I'm going to say to you, put major projects and contracts aside. If it's just between you and this the subcontractor, why? Why are you getting all that? Why do you want to know if they've got a C service?
I don't know. I dig holes. I dig holes. I truck dirt.
You engage a person to do some work for you. They say, we're compliant. Our trucks are roadworthy. We get them serviced. You don't need to second guess them. If something goes wrong, it's on them. It's not on you. And look at all these prosecutions. It's like it's still the driver in the truck. And this is this whole thing about you can't transfer or delegate duties. It's their duty. End of story. It can never be your duty. When we're talking about the duty is the duty and people have their own duty and you're allowed to rely on that in the eyes of the law, there are some certain things that you want to be doing and there's always more emphasis on the transport operator and the things like fitness for work is a big one. We talked about the Eastern Freeway. We talked about the multiple fatality there involving the police officers.
But isn't the fitness for work ending up just being like I get a fit for work every single day and it ends up being a click, 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 click?
Yeah, well, no. It shouldn't just be a click, click, click. But again, ultimately, you look at the Eastern Freeway one and it's like, well, the driver banged straight away, 22 years in jail, reduced to 18 and a half because then he started giving evidence against his supervisors and stuff like that. So then you had the company directors that were fined.
From Sydney, didn't know anything about the situation that had happened.
I don't know enough about it, but he was the one that got the jail term, that was overturned on appeal.
Yes.
Yeah. So he went through all of that. There's 123,000 in legals. Apparently, someone did a podcast on that. And then that was overturned. And the one down here in Melbourne as a supervisor, his was also taken out of the NHVR space, I think, because he got a community corrections order. So that would have been criminal, yep. So there's all these different laws, you see, and it's only when you really start unpacking them that you get to go, okay, so that was that one, that was that one. And they all operate, quite differently. And it's when you just get everything's put in the same bucket. That
and that's where it's hard for someone like me to wade through that, to try and get.
Well, you wouldn't be able to.
No, definitely not. And then while running a business and reading your library of policies, and having to do all of that stuff, and then actually try and make some money without giving it all to the tax office, which is a whole other problem altogether.
We're all in the same boat there.
But then, on top of that, at the end of it, you have to try and read an article while you're sitting on the couch at night time.
You just need to have people that are doing that for you, and people that you can trust and rely on. Because one of the things is that you have to acquire, up-to-date knowledge of what's going on in your industry around health and safety and chain of responsibility. So you just need to have someone who's doing that. But as a director, you need to check that they are. So you might be wanting to see an email every now and then that person sends out, or you might want them to be going to a conference, or you might want them to be enrolled in a webinar, and just have some oversight that they're doing that.
Or you might want to bring Denise in and just do a little bit of training, just a small amount of,
Or, as I say, like with the gates, where I've sent that out to my clients. So, that's also having someone there that's going to bring those things to your attention, because there's a lot to sort through.
It's actually too much. From my position and what we do, I'm very sales based at in my role and what I do, the compliance and safety sort of stuff that we do. It's challenging for me to keep on top of while you're also trying to do everything else. And then, so you do definitely have to farm that out, I would say.
Well, I think being clear on what am I doing for compliance and what am I doing for my contracts. And they're two different things. And the ones that you really need to have in order is this stuff over here. What are you doing about your compliance? Because that's the one that will send you to jail.
Yep.
The other one might lose you a contract. That could be a big deal as well.
I cry. I cry a lot about the contracts. I definitely cry if I went to jail. It's not.
You have to be doing something pretty bad to go to jail. Like really, really knowing about a risk and just making people do it anyway.
Yeah.
With in my training, so that talks about all those due diligence areas and gives you ideas just through the online training scenarios and so on of what sort of information you can get from your business. And it also does try to differentiate this point between collecting information that's of no relevance to you as opposed to getting the information that is relevant and doing something with it, because you don't want to just have piles of paper or gigabytes building up. With drivers, so for businesses that have drivers, so all people that are working for you, there's an expectation that they are training their drivers, and that drivers, are told about the fitness for work, about the pre-starts, but trained in how to do a pre-start, not just, given a piece of paper or given an app these days, about, follow the road laws. Make sure you've got a valid licence. If anything happens to your licence, come and let us know. Courteous driving, don't get into road rage. Driver distraction, yes, phones, but there's a whole lot of other things. So you want something straightforward, right? If you want it and you could do this for the businesses that work for you. You could say, we want you to have something like this in place. Go find it.
We often make short videos. I think they're called vines or vials, or I don't know what they are. I'm not an IT person at all, but we make these short videos about things like this, then put them out to say, okay, this is what fit for work policy is. This is why you should fill it out. And I sit here and I hear you say that, and I go, okay, we should send out a quick little snippet to say, this is what our fit for work policy is. This is what it means to fill out. This is why you're filling it out, and this is what the expectation is when you fill it out.
Yeah.
Now, I know that that's a bit on deaf ears also. Yeah. There are guys, in that it says, are you fatigued? There is a guy or a girl who has a baby at home that is rocking up to work fatigued at some point. Now, is it a risk? It's probably a very low risk. They have got some sleep. Have they got enough sleep? If they were to fill that out, from your standpoint, well, are they driving? It's a good question.
Because there's a fitness for work for driving.
Yes.
Which is, it's a bit different to someone who hasn't enough sleep coming to work in the office. Much different risk
Agreed,
profile there.
Very much.
And drivers need to, it's all very well we're sitting here talking about fit for work and fatigue and so on. They need to know what that is. And the people around them need to have that concept as well. So say, fleet control, whoever it is, operations, they're on the phone to drivers, they're talking to drivers, or they come in at the end of the day with their dockets or whatever it is. They're in a position to be able to identify potentially if someone does have a fitness for work issue that they haven't raised.
Yes.
It can be attendance. If it's someone that you're seeing regularly, they start coming to work late. They start having more days off. Their attitudes changed, so they're not as friendly with people as they were. They're all red flags. Okay, there's something going on in this person's life. And fitness for work isn't just you haven't had enough sleep.
Yeah.
It's all,
It's
the
every
wellbeing
flag
stuff as well. Yeah, all of
the
that.
way around it.
And you really want to be helping people in that situation. You've got to create an environment that people aren't punished for reporting, that you make it so it's acceptable and it's encouraged that if someone's not well, you can say, hey, I'm not great today. Your situation's a bit different because you can't say, well, you don't go in the truck today, we'll get you to do ABC around the yard or something.
Yes.
So yours is quite different. But then these are not your employees either.
Some are. Remember, I do own some of the trucks, but most of the trucks I don't.
Yeah, so the ones that you own, the trucks that you employ the drivers, so yeah, you definitely
I'm
have
the prime there. I learned that while I was here.
So, you're also an employer of drivers, which is another party in the chain.
Shit.
But once you're a party, you're a party. So it doesn't matter if you do one or you do all 10 of those functions. Once you're in it, you're in it. Yeah. So I've got this driver handbook and driver training.
Yes.
Which is
Give
available.
it the plug.
I've got to give it the plug. It's a good course and it tells drivers things that they wouldn't know. It tells them about how the law is enforced. It tells them about these 90 offences that they've got under the Heavy Vehicle National Law. It just tells them stuff they wouldn't know. And I think it's really important to have the big picture. It talks about fitness for work. It talks about fatigue.
We'll get all the links.
It talks about vehicle standards.
We'll put it in.
All of that.
Yep.
And I'm happy to be able to offer people who have tuned into our podcast a 25% discount on this.
And if they
discount code.
subscribe, because I got to do a call
subscribe to your
to
YouTube
action.
channel.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Because
subscribe, everyone.
we get more views than we have subscriptions for some reason, so we need people to click the subscribe button.
Yeah, that's all you have to do. Click the subscribe.
And then we'll add, so we're getting 25% off for some of the...
Yeah. So we'll have a discount coupon called Jimmy25.
And I'm sure they'll be able to figure out where to put that in.
So that it comes with a driver handbook as well. So it's not just you do the training and forget all about it. You do the training, download the driver handbook, and then you've got that record. So if you had to go back to any of them guys and say, remember this, you did this in the training, this fitness for work, this pre-start check, you've got something concrete to pull it back to, anchor it to.
Okay, well, thank you very much for coming in, Denise. Appreciate it. We do an awkward handshake at the end. It's fantastic. I started doing it, and now it's getting even worse because I keep bringing up that it's awkward.
Right.
Now,
how do we do that?
No, you have to reach underneath your microphone, and I don't. Because it has to be this hand. Thank you.
Okay.
I appreciate you coming in. Subscribe to it. If anyone wants to come on, we are always looking for more guests on the podcast of all different sorts. It doesn't necessarily have to be in civil construction, like Denise from CoR Comply.
www.corcomply.com.au.
Perfect.
That's it. It's been lovely, and I think we could have easily done another hour.
Easily. Thank you very much. See ya.